Well, hello, everyone. This is Wilson Cole. I'm president of Adams, Evans, and Ross. And we recently did a webinar where we kind of go into very deep detail on how to enforce a judgment. And I kind of wanted to give you 5 techniques that we will have our forwarding attorneys enforce a judgment after they get, their judgment in court. Now, let me also say, the way that you enforce judgments vary from state to state. So certainly either use us for collections, and then 87% of the time we're going to get it collected where you don't have to worry about enforcing a judgment, or we're going to send it out to a local attorney and we're going to have your debtor sued, and hopefully they pay. But if they don't, then we can certainly help enforce that judgment along with our forwarding attorneys. So just kind of keep that in mind. What's true in one state may not be true in, and I'll kind of make some nuances on that. But the easiest way to enforce a judgment is through bank garnishment of a bank account. Now, most states are garnishable states. So you can, after you get a judgment, if the debtor doesn't pay, if you know that they deal with their Wachovia bank, you have a garnishment filed with Wachovia through the court system. And typically what happens is it freezes everything for 30 days. And if your judgment was $10,000 and there was $100,000 in there, it freezes all $100,000. At the end of 30 days, they pull out the $10,000 that your judgment was for. They send it to the courts, and the courts then eventually send it to the attorneys, and the attorneys eventually send it to us, and we eventually send it to you. So it's a little bit of a little bit like watching paint dry once the garnishment is hit, but it is a very effective way. The problem that you run into, and for example, South Carolina is a non-garnishable state, which can be problematic. The other thing that you can do in some states is you can attach accounts receivable. So if you know that they are owed, and I'm just going to use fictitious companies, let's say they did work for a GE company or for Ford or for some company, it can be a less known company, but if you know that they were doing business with a company, in some states you can have the attorneys and have the courts notify that you are now a judgment creditor, and any funds that are owed now have to be paid directly to the attorney. There was a $150,000 issue up in Ohio to where we sued a company. They were out of New York and had them sued. And make a long story short, they ignored it. We got the judgment, and then they used the long-arm statutes. Now, that's not available in all states, but they were able to redirect $150,000. And lo and behold, once that happened, the debtor came to Ohio and was trying to undo the judgment, and it kind of kept things tied up for an extended period of time. But at the end of the day, we were able to, courts ruled that the attorneys could keep the funds and pass them on to our client, so our client was paid. Another way that they do it is they'll do basically a debtor exam. And that is where they bring in the debtor and they basically say, where are your assets? Now, over the years, it's rare that once they actually get to court, if they show up, that they say, oh my God, here's all my bank accounts, and here's where all my assets are. They typically aren't that forthcoming. But what they will do if they're concerned about it is they start negotiating before that court date. All of a sudden there's a judgment and they see that they've got to go in there for a debtor exam. So they offer to pay, if it's $100,000, they offer to pay $20,000 a month, or they try to settle or things on those lines. And anything that's agreed upon, of course, you guys, our client, would have to agree on that as well. The other thing that we can do is, let's say we send out debtor exam and they ignore it, and they ignore it, and they ignore it. Now, this is not true in all states, but in the state of Georgia, for example, and other states as well, if somebody ignores an order of the court for the individual to come in as an officer and open up their books, they can sign a bench warrant. And I can tell you, in the last 60 days, we have had one where they ignored it. And, and it went on for probably 3 to 4 months, and they just wouldn't respond to the courts. And lo and behold, the judge put a bench warrant out on the debtor, not because he owed the money, because owing money in a commercial case they threw away debtor's prison years ago. But the fact that he was ignoring the court order to come in and explain. And As soon as that bench warrant was issued and the courts let them know, hey, we've issued a warrant for your arrest, the debtor instantly reached out to the attorney and paid every single dime that they were owed. So that is another way to do it. Another thing, and this is where companies that use personal guarantees, and there's a large national company that's masterfully gets it in their paperwork. But what inevitably happens is we get a judgment against the individual. And the client says, okay, I want to go take their house. He owns a $10 million house. They will file a lien on that property. Now, it does not mean that they go foreclose on that house, because a lot of times that house may have, if it's a $10 million house, they may owe $8 million, they may owe $9 million or $5 million. Thing is, you have to pay off the creditors that are in the mortgage company first. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. But what it will do is, we had one of our attorneys out of the Northeast probably 15, 18 years ago, get a judgment, and we were able to get it against the individual as well. They filed a lien on the house. That sat there forever. The debtor has now, I don't know if they had passed away, but they were liquidating assets and they sold their house. And this $27,000 original bill wound up turning into like $75,000 or $80,000. Now, there were attorney's fees, late fees, and everything else were built in on that. And so there's things that you can do, assuming that you have a personal guarantee. Now, keep in mind, you typically have to have a personal guarantee to be able to go after them personally. But in addition to that, there are certain states that doesn't apply. In the state of Florida, you cannot touch somebody's house. In the state of Texas, to the same degree as well. Houses are absolutely off limits. A lot of high-profile cases. When O.J. Simpson, for instance, got the gazillion $1 million judgment against him by one of the families, he had moved down to Florida and, bought a house and paid cash. Well, that house is off limits. So that's kind of one of those things that you need to look at, but there's different ways to enforce those judgments. The good news is typically most of them get resolved prior to a judge entering in a judgment. It winds up just getting resolved and settling. But if there's a judgment and the debtor is still not wanting to pay, in most cases you have teeth. With us, we're going to let you know which states are going to be friendly, which states are not. Perfect example, in the state of South Carolina, I'm not saying that we won't sue anyone in the state of South Carolina, but South Carolina is very problematic for enforcing a judgment. But the opposite goes against the state of California, for instance. Tons of long-arm stanchions. Same thing with Texas, in my opinion, probably to a lesser degree. I'm sure there's collection agencies and attorneys that would say, no, it's much easier to collect on a judgment in Tennessee, or not Tennessee, but in Texas. But we find that there's too many exempt assets in the state of Texas where you don't have some of those same requirements in California. So just kind of keep that in mind. And you want to have a partner that walks you through it. Now, hopefully everybody's paying you, but if you have somebody that you'd like to discuss, visit our website at staffingdebt.com and book an appointment with one of our credit and collection consultants to talk about the specifics of your case. Now, if it's already gone legal, we wouldn't be able to help you. We have to get it before it goes legal, because 87% of the time we're going to be able to get it collected for you ahead of time. And also keep a lookout for the entire webinar, to where we take these same subjects and drill down a little bit deeper. And thank you. Hey guys, it's Wilson again, and this video was brought to you by Adams, Evans, and Ross. And if you like the video, please make sure that you click on the subscribe button and also like the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those below as well. If you'd like to learn more about our company, please visit our website at staffingdebt.com. And also remember, if there's no collection, there's absolutely no cost at all.